This is the mini lesson for lesson 4.4. Our teaching point is that you will know that subtracting integers is adding the additive inverse. You are going to be skilled at applying the additive inverse to subtraction problems, modeling subtraction of integers on a number line, and using two-color counters, and also solving real-world problems involving integers. Okay, this is a little bit of a lengthier lesson because it combines the two lessons we did on addition into one for subtraction. So I'm going to have you pause the video at times and do a little check-in to see how you're coming along. So first we're going to use the number line. Again, we always start at 0. So I'm going to positive 5. And then remember, from 5 is where I'm going to move next. But this time, what this subtraction means is really the opposite of. So to put this in words, I'm starting at 5, and now I'm going the opposite of 5 negatives. 5 negatives would go this way. The opposite would then be going 5 this direction. And where do I end up? I actually end up at positive 10. So 5, taking away 5 negatives, puts me at 10. Let's try another one. So I'm starting at negative 6. I go 0 over to negative 6. Now this is my new starting point. I am going the opposite of 3 positives. Well, I know 3 positives is to the right, so I go the opposite, 3 spaces. Where did I end up? Negative 9. So negative 6 minus 3 is actually negative 9. Number 3, I start at 0. I go all the way to positive 8. From positive 8, I'm going the opposite of 2 negatives. The opposite of 2 negatives would be moving positive 2. I end at positive 10. If you're starting to catch on, I'd like you to pause the video and try 4 through 7 on your own and then resume and check your work. I'm starting at 0, going to negative 2. From negative 2, I'm going the opposite of 5 positives, which means I'm going in a negative direction. 5 places, should end at negative 7. I start at 0, I go to negative 3. From negative 3, I go the opposite of 6 negatives. So I go positive 6 places, and I end at positive 3. Number 6, I start at 0, I go to negative 4. From negative 4, I go the opposite of 4 negatives. Negative would be to the left, so I go the opposite of that, and I go to the right 4, and I'm back at 0. Last one here, I started at 0, I go to positive 4. From positive 4, I go the opposite of 5 negatives. 5 negatives would be left, I go right 5. Where did I end up? Positive 9. Okay, let's take a look at using the colored counters. This is a little more challenging, so I have to think about 0 pairs, and that any time I have a positive and a negative, that equals 0, so it does not change the value. So first of all, I start with 5 positives. Now it tells me to take away 5 negatives. But I can't do that. There aren't 5 negatives on my workspace. So what I do know is I can maintain the same value on this workspace if I just add quantities of 0. So if I add a positive and a negative, that's like adding 0 to this workspace. I didn't change the value. I need to end up with 5 negatives on here. So that means I need to add on to this board 5 0 pairs. By doing so, what I really added was a bunch of zeros to my workspace. So this still represents positive 5, but now I'm able to take away 5 negatives. So now I can grab these 5 negatives, I can remove them from the board, and what's left? I have 10 positives. So we have 2 different ways with a number line and with our colored counters to demonstrate why we end up with 10. Okay, let's try another couple. So I've got my workspace, and I start with 6 negatives. Now it's telling me to take off 3 positives, but I don't have 3 positives on here. So I need to put 3 positives on here without changing the value. So if I put 3 zero pairs on here, I have not changed the value. But now I am able to take away 3 positives. These 3 can come off my board. And what am I left with? I'm left with 9 negatives. Same thing we had over here. Okay, let's try another one. I'm starting with 8 positives. I need to take off 2 negatives. There aren't any negatives. So I'm going to add 2 negatives as 0 pairs. Now I am able to take off 2 negatives, and what am I left with? I am left with 10 positives. Again, same thing we had here. This next one will probably be a little easier. I'm starting with 9 negatives. I am going to take off 5 negatives. Well, I can do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I could take 5 negatives off. So I didn't need to add any 0 pairs this time. This one was easier. What am I left with? 4 negatives. Okay, if you can try 5, 6, and 7 again on your own, and then resume the video to see how you're doing, I would like you to do that at this point. Hopefully you were able to do the following 3 on your own. I'm starting with 3 negatives. Okay, this one is, you had to do a little thinking here. I need to take off 6 negatives. Well, I already have 3 there. I need to take off 6, so I need to just be able to put 3 more on here. So I need to put 3 0 pairs so that now I can see that I can take 6 negatives off. I didn't need to put 6 0 pairs on here. Now I can take these 6 negatives right off my board, and I'm left with 3 positives. Next one, I'm starting with 4 negatives. I want to take off 4 negatives. Well, that's easy, they're all there. I can just take them off. What am I left with? Nothing. Okay, this last one, I have 4 positives. I need to take off 7 positives. Well, I already have 4 here. I need to take off 7, so I really need to put 3 0 pairs onto my plate or onto my workspace. Now I can take off 7 positives, and I am left with 3 negatives. Okay, we also have a few word problems that you're going to be using today too, because our teaching point talked about real world problems. So here, the temperature was -15 when you woke up. And during the day, the temperature fell another 10, so we are subtracting another 10 degrees. What is the current temperature? It says to write an equation. So here's my equation, trying to find the current temperature. So again, if I think about possibly a number line for this one, my temperature started, so I'm going to just put in negatives by groups of 5. So the day started at -15. Then I'm going down another 10 degrees. Where did I end up? I ended up at -25 degrees. Okay, another common way to show this is using a thermometer. So here they're asking what's the difference between the high and low temperature. So I'm looking at a thermometer. So here's 0. So 32 degrees would be somewhere up here. I want to know the difference between high of 32 and a low of -14 degrees. So 32 minus -14. is going to be my answer. When I look at this, I can see the difference between these. There would be 32 degrees here. There would be 14 degrees here. Altogether from here to here, the difference would be 46. There are 46 degrees between my high and low temperature. Okay, the last one. I'm going to again give myself a picture to help me out. So here is 0 degrees. It tells me what's the difference between the low temperature and high. If the high was -3, I want the difference. The low was -18. So I'm going to look at it in a picture form. -3 degrees would be here. -18 degrees would be somewhere down here. So I want to know how many degrees are between these. Well, between -3 and -18, I can see there would be 15 degrees in between these. So 15 degrees would be my answer.